Mother's Day is a week away. You've been warned. I'm Charlie Sykes. Sunday Insight starts right now. Good morning and welcome to Sunday Insight. In the week that was, the Packers draft nose tackle Kenny Clark in the first round of the NFL draft. Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump both moved closer to their party's nominations, and a new poll shows that more than 20% of voters want none of the above. Ted Cruz picks Carly Fiorina as his running mate ahead of the crucial Indiana primary, and Bernie Sanders starts laying off staffers. A prom shooting in Antigo leaves 2 wounded and 1 dead. In Milwaukee, a 26-year-old mom is shot to death by her 2-year-old child who found a gun in the car. And the economy starts the year slowly with first quarter economic growth the weakest in 2 years. But we start with a change in the state Supreme Court. A surprising announcement from veteran Justice David Prosser, who says that he will step down later this summer. Prosser has been the intellectual anchor of the conservative majority on the court and found himself at the center of many of the court's controversies in recent years. His retirement will give Governor Scott Walker his second appointment to the High Court, a pick that could solidify the court's 5-2 conservative majority for years. Whoever Walker picks won't have to run for re-election until 2020. Joining me on our panel this morning, the Milwaukee Community Journal's Mikel Holt, former State Representative Michelle Litjens, Defense Attorney Dan Adams, and Media Tracker's Brian Sikma. How should Walker approach this particular appointment, Brian Sikma?
Well, I do think that there's going to be several qualified people that apply for this job. It's my understanding you have Judge Mark Gundrum, who's now sitting in the appellate court. You have Judge Randy Koshnick, out of a circuit court judge in Jefferson County, who's applied for it. So there are some good legal minds, some conservative legal minds who have done work in the trenches, who'd be experienced people to put on the Supreme Court. This is a chance, though, for the governor to kind of solidify the direction of the Supreme Court, which, whether he runs in 2018 or not, and he says he is this is going to be able to shape Wisconsin policy in a way that you won't be able to just through the legislature.
Well, this has been a court, though, that has been plagued by dysfunction, by divisions. There are a lot of people in the legal community that are, not...
And those 2 justices, Abrahamson and Bradley, Judge, not the conservative Bradley, the liberal Bradley, those are the 2 that are still sitting there. So as long as they're on the court, I think it's going to be a little bit of dysfunction.
Okay, what is David Prosser's legacy going to be? How is he going to be remembered?
Well, unfortunately, there is the controversy about him and the other Bradley getting into some type of physical confrontation that we never got to the heart of. I don't think that's very interesting. What I do think is interesting is how Scott Walker does approach the appointment. I think he should appoint Mark Gundrum. I think he's probably the best conservative candidate out there. He's got a political background. He's affable. People seem to like him. And he's in his mid-40s. That could really be an imprint on the court for a long time.
Okay. You have any take on this?
It's sad that Shirley Abrahamson, who's 83, isn't deciding that she wants to retire anytime soon. But I think that Scott Walker has a challenge ahead of him when it comes to who he is going to appoint. I think he needs to make sure that whoever he's looking at perhaps isn't as political. You're never going to make the other side happy, but at least maybe he could better prepare himself for his next re-election.
Well, I was talking to people in the legal community about that, and they made exactly the same point, which is that, look, this is a court that needs to enhance its reputation, needs to fix some of the things. You need to replace David Prosser as a legal scholar, interestingly enough, because David Prosser wasn't a judge before he became a justice. He did have a political background, but he was a very, very significant legal scholar. And, I do think that Walker's going to have to weigh that whole question of, are you going to put a political legal lightweight in that position, or are you going to look for somebody who's going to be able to anchor that and maybe take the position, take the place that David Prosser has?
Let me throw this strange idea out there. What if Governor Scott Walker named the person best qualified for the position versus somebody who's to the right of right?
Well, he could. There are actually people who are very qualified who are also right.
Well, there's a handful, but most of them wrong and still right. But I mean, a moderate. Somebody who can objectively look at the law instead of being swayed by partisan politics. Matter of fact, you should name a black woman to the post, to be quite honest.
Well, that could, of course, happen when unicorns run down State Street. But I guess, going back to this, you mentioned Mark Gundrum. He's going to be one of the names out there. Mike Brennan, former Milwaukee County judge, is going to be on that short list. You know that he's going to be mentioned, as a legal scholar. He has been reluctant to actually run, and we've seen what's happened to these judicial elections now. If you're not reluctant to run, if you don't want to run,
he's got a lot of runway though. I mean, he's got a 5-year ability to build a track record.
But somebody described him as the Mario Cuomo of state Supreme Court elections, always talking about it but never actually pulls the trigger.
Well, in all fairness, he may be too old at this point. When you have a 46-year-old like Gundrum, why would you pick the guy in his 50s? Or
and also even younger than that, Brian Hagedorn is a former legal counsel to the governor who would be there. Tom Cruise, who is a young appeals court judge. There's a very considerable bench that they have out there. So I don't necessarily think. I think that there was an initial impression that the politician who's the judge is going to be the front runner. But
what about Maxine White?
Yeah.
Now would that fit the criteria?
Yeah, you know what?
That would fit all the criteria.
If Mary Burke had been elected governor, there would be a chance to be able to do that. But I think this is a legacy appointment for Scott Walker, and he's going to really have to think about, going forward. You're not just talking about the next 2 years, 3 years. You're talking about the next decade shaping this, because if Walker sticks around, there's a possibility that he may have
one or two more.
Well, that he may end up with 4 judges, and this is going to be a way to put your imprint on that court for a very, very long time. Okay, what is your glass half full? What is your glass half empty? Let's go around the table. We'll start with you, Mikel Holt.
My glass is half full because the county exec and Superintendent Demond Means have introduced a modest but beneficial plan to turn around a few of the 50 failing public schools that are at risk of a state takeover. My glass is half empty because some of the usual NPS obstructionists want to fight the state law behind that plan, even as they fail or refuse to come up with programs to educate the majority of black children.
Michelle Litjens.
Well, my glass is half empty because about 70% of millennials seem to be supporting socialist Bernie Sanders. But it's half full because Speaker Paul Ryan is actively trying to woo them over to our side. And if anyone can start that trend, Paul Ryan can.
Dan Adams.
Well, my glass is half full because a federal court threw out Sheriff David Clark's latest lawsuit against the Milwaukee County Executive. This suit was, in a word, frivolous. My glass is half empty because Clark and the county board continue to file meritless lawsuits again and again and again, only to be thrown out, but not before well-connected lawyers get their cut. The latest suit cost us taxpayers $50,000. Outrageous.
Brian Sikma.
My glass is half full because mothers at Middleton High School are still serving the Jesus lunch. They've always had a permit to do so. But my glass is half empty because not only is the Freedom from Religion Foundation protesting the lunches, but they're also refusing to get a permit for their counter-protests. Some hypocrisy there.
Well, my glass is half full because new numbers suggest that the teen pregnancy rate nationally has dropped to an all-time low. It's half empty because teen pregnancies still cost taxpayers more than $9 billion a year. Our Sunday Insight Countdown shows that we are just 2 days away from the crucial Indiana primary. The California primary is 37 days away. The Republican National Convention is 78 days from now, and the Democratic National Convention starts in 85 days. We will be right back. Cruz picks a running mate, facing a do-or-die primary in Indiana on Tuesday. Texas Senator Ted Cruz took the unusual step of naming former presidential candidate Carly Fiorina as his running mate. Cruz trails frontrunner Donald Trump in the delegate count and badly needs some wins in the upcoming contest. He's hoping that the addition of Fiorina to the ticket will shake the race up. Fiorina wasted no time making her mark, going after both Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton.
Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton both will be disastrous for this nation. You see what we have? Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton, they are two sides of the same coin.
Michelle Litjens, is that a game changer or is that just a Hail Mary pass?
That's a Hail Mary pass, unfortunately. I think Carly Fiorina is so smart. I mean, she definitely would add a lot to a ticket, but he chose her too soon, I think. I think he is hoping that she's going to help push him over the finish line. We saw President Reagan do this, as an overreach in 1976, and it didn't help him get there. I would hope maybe it would help a little bit, but with so much early voting already happening in Indiana, maybe it's too much too late.
You may be right. My take is exactly the opposite, though, that I think that he should have done it earlier. I think at this point he does have that sense of sort of desperation last minute. She is an amazingly effective surrogate. When she was here in Wisconsin the night before the primary, I got to introduce her out in Waukesha, and trust me, she was a rock star. And you watch how the crowds react to her. She is a major addition to the campaign. The question is it too little too late in Indiana?
Well, I don't think it's too little too late in
You're
Indiana.
a big Cruz guy.
Well, I am a Cruz supporter. I'll be honest about that. But I do think at this point, what they were trying to do is kill that story that Trump swept all the primaries on Tuesday.
Which he did.
So it killed the story, but it does have the unfortunate side effect of looking desperate at this point in the game. Now, we're going into California.
Well, it didn't actually kill the story, though, because, you know, you're getting...
The story's still going on. People are starting to sense this.
Front page of the Washington Post on Friday.
Is an extraordinarily qualified individual. She ran a very substantive presidential campaign. If you saw her in those debates, she was very intellectual, very smart, very much keeping her own with anybody else on that stage, no matter their level of governing experience or not. And she does have some ties to California. So I think that was kind of the math here. Hey, let's announce it in Indiana, then hopefully she'll give us a little bit of a boost in California.
How important is it for Cruz to win in Indiana?
It's a must-win state.
It is a must-win state. If he doesn't win in Indiana, is it over?
It gives Donald Trump a very, very strong lead to get to the very
regardless. You know, I would say that, you know, I would prefer her over Cruz, what he's been called, Lucifer.
By John Boehner, interestingly enough. This is supposed to be the anti-establishment campaign, and now John Boehner is basically supposed to be so...
I mean, but she didn't get that much traction in her bid to be president. Let's be honest about it. You know, she had one high point criticizing the Trump, and that was it. You know,
but she never had unfavorables.
No.
Yeah, but you know, you think a bunch of people are going to run to Cruz now that he brought somebody on whose name sound like a breakfast cereal? I mean, let's be honest.
That's your best line? Their name sounds like a breakfast cereal?
Donald Trump.
No kidding.
I think the opening for the joke whether or not this merger is going to go as well as the HP Compact merger is almost worth the price of admission. It's way too late. It smells desperate. It's not going to help Cruz.
Yeah, I think the timing. Look, part of the problem was that you have the East Coast media that, of course, is obsessed about East Coast votes. You know, yes, Donald Trump did sweep those eastern states. Everybody expected he was going to. Very low turnout. They're not Republican states. On the other hand, it creates its own psychology, its own momentum. The media is already so invested in Donald Trump because the conservative media, because he's for good ratings, liberal media, because they love what it's about to do to conservatives. The question is, would a win in Indiana change the narrative? And I think that
No.
On
if he wins
Wednesday,
in Indiana, that changes.
If Cruz wins in Indiana, suddenly now people begin to focus back on the electoral, the delegate math. The calendar now becomes more favorable to Cruz. But I agree with Brian Sikma. There is no way that Donald Trump is denied if he wins in Indiana. It's all down on Indiana. No, you may not want to hear it, but we will tell you anyway. Let's hand out some unsolicited advice. Michael, you're first.
Well, mine is to Hillary Clinton. Saying you carry hot sauce in your purse may resonate as you apply for membership in the Blue-Eyed Soul Coalition. But don't tell us it's healthy. Most black folks have hypertension, and hot sauce, which I love, is full of sodium.
Wow. Michelle Litjens.
If you want to open a pot shop in Denver, Colorado, you're going to have to go outside of the city limits. Who knew they'd have a high concentration of marijuana stores in low-income areas? Didn't see that one coming, did you?
Dan Adams.
Well, my advice is for the Milwaukee School Board. You may not like last week's Opportunity Schools partnership proposal, but the proposal, essentially creating MPS instrumentality charter schools, is as good as it's going to get. Accept it.
Brian Sikma.
Well, my unsolicited advice is to Republican voters in Indiana. If you care at all about the conservative movement, if you care at all about the future of the country, and if you don't want the GOP to be represented by a New York liberal, vote for Ted Cruz on Tuesday.
I'm still on the hot sauce thing because I have actually been over to Mikel Holt's house and had the ribs. What do you put on those ribs? I mean, seriously, I know you are Mr. Hot Sauce. Okay, I know that some people will blame the so-called Never Trump movement for electing Hillary in November. My advice, recognize that what will actually elect Hillary is nominating Donald Trump in the first place. Next on Sunday Insight, should parents be held responsible if their kids are bullies? The fight against bullying targets parents in one Wisconsin city. A new ordinance in Shawano would allow police to fine parents if they are told that their child is acting as a bully and then they do nothing about it. Parents would have 90 days to intervene. If they don't and their child continues to be a bully, they will be fined $366. If there's a second offense within 1 year, they could be fined $681. Is a good idea, Dan Adams?
No. Absolutely not. Listen, I get bullying, but bullying's been around. I mean, there's stories of bullying in the Bible, right? I mean, Joseph's brothers, right? Bullying has become worse and worse because of technology, Facebook, the ability to send out messages to a lot of people, spread a rumor to a lot of people really quick.
So what do you do about it?
Well, you don't have the nanny state come in and start dictating to parents what to do. I mean, who are they actually going to incentivize with this threat of a $366 fine? I mean, it's just
parents.
It's just absurd. No, it's absurd. Nobody's going to change their parenting behavior because of some threat that the government's going to come into your bedroom. That's
okay.
It's not
Do you agree with that, Mikel Holt?
Well, you know, I mean, I look at it more holistically. You know, if one of my kids broke a window, then the parent has to pay for it. I don't know how you control the behavior of a kid, because you can slap them around.
Okay, no, but here's the question. Is this just kids being kids, or are we dealing with something that really society needs to crack down on?
Kids are being kids, and what Dan said is right. It's gone to a different level.
Yeah.
I've seen it. I have a teenager. So because of Snapchat and everything else, social media has made this much different and much more personal. But have we emasculated our schools so much that they can't take care of anything on their own without calling in the police to do something about it?
Well,
why can't these schools call in these parents and say, we're going to sit you down and we're going to show you what your kid did and we need to fix
Well,
this?
whose responsibility is it, the schools or the parents?
If it happens at school, if it's going on during school, I think the school has a responsibility to do something about
Brian
it.
Sikma, you're a new dad.
Well, I am a new dad.
And so you're going to have to be dealing with this?
So I'll have to dealing with this. Thank you very much. This is one of the stupidest ideas I've heard in a while, because I understand they want to deal with bullying, but as Michelle said, give the schools the opportunity to punish these kids. Hey, sit out a break. You know, don't go out on a recess. Have some consequences right away. But do we really want the police sitting in the home? The TMJ4 story about this talked about how, well, we want to make sure parents are incentivizing their children enough. Who decides enough? Do you want a police officer showing up at your door saying, oh, you're not doing enough to keep your kid from bullying?
Injures the victim.
Well, we have laws to handle that. We have laws to handle that.
Manifestation of
but we don't need police officers in homes deciding if parents are doing a good enough job.
The element in all of these stories that is missing is the parent who is responsible, who is engaged.
Who can't control.
Anything that gets parents more engaged as the solution, I think, is at least worth a look. I understand your point about the nanny state. I'm not sure that you really want to call the cops because you're talking about mean tweets. I mean, that's the part of the problem is how do we define bullying? You know, if somebody says, you know, that you're dumb on Facebook, is that bullying? I mean, did Donald Trump bully me when he called me those names and everything? No. But on the other hand, how do we solve this problem of parents who either are disengaged or
the parent bully the bully? Because this timeout junk doesn't work. I don't know where y'all got that stuff from. You know, they spanked us growing up, and
you turned out just fine. You know what?
Apparently not enough.
Do need to be involved.
What is it you don't get? Let's go around the table. Mikel Holt.
Well, Time magazine named Caitlyn Jenner to its 100 most influential list. But what I don't get is how they mistakenly proclaim she won an Olympic gold medal. No, she didn't. He did.
Well, it's going to get complicated. Michelle.
Last week, Hillary Clinton wrote an op-ed piece saying that sending 215,000 women to prison destabilizes families. Does she think sending 2.2 million men to prison doesn't affect families? So does Hillary Clinton believe women are more important than men to the family?
Dan Adams.
Well, I don't get Bernie Sanders firing scores of young campaign staffers rather than reassigning them to future primary states. I thought his brand of socialism entitled everyone to a job for life.
Brian Sikma.
What I don't get is why someone who claims he's more conservative than Paul Ryan and is running to oust Paul Ryan will go on ultra-left-wing Madison radio show to ask Democrats to vote for him to mess with the Republican primary in August.
Well, what I don't get is what was Will Ferrell and the Hollywood liberal crowd thinking when they were planning to make a comedy about Ronald Reagan's battle with Alzheimer's? They backed off after massive blowback, but what made them think that dementia was funny in the first place? Next on Sunday Inside, our panel picks the winners and losers of the week. First, here's your morning news update. It's time for our panel to pick the winners and losers of the week. Mikel Holt, you are first again.
The loser, my long shot, Bernie the Sanders. He's reduced his campaign staff, which is a strong signal that it's all over but the shouting. My winner, Ashanti Hamilton, elected president of the Common Council, a.k.a. vice mayor. What's even better is that he issues a warning to those blocking progress. Move off the track or get run over.
Michelle Litjens.
My winners are the two high school juniors from Hudson who scored a perfect score on their ACTs. That's no easy feat. Congratulations to Brandon Bagley and Parker Holum. My loser is Kim Jong-un of North Korea, who is bringing back the Pleasure Squad, a selected group of 13 and 14-year-old versions to pleasure him. One more suggestion, that Kim Jong-un is off his rocker.
Dan Adams.
Well, my winner is also Alderman Ashanti Hamilton, who was voted the Milwaukee Common Council president last week. Beyond the immediate clout of the position, Hamilton is now in prime position to run for mayor. My loser is former Republican Speaker of the House of Representatives Dennis Hastert, who was sentenced this week to prison for financial crimes relating to his sexual abuse of several boys in the 1970s. What a hypocrite and what a disgrace.
Brian Sikma.
Well, my winner this week is Sergeant First Class Charles Martland, a Special Forces soldier who was almost kicked out of the Army for daring to punish an Afghan child rapist. The Army made the right decision to keep Martland. My loser of the week is the House Armed Services Committee, which voted on Thursday to keep the U.S. Air Force dependent on Russian-made rocket engines for satellite launches. Why are we relying on Putin's Russia for military satellite launches? Well, that's beyond me.
Winner. My winner, Wisconsin conservatives were likely to see another conservative justice named to the state Supreme Court, replacing retiring Justice David Prosser. Loser, Milwaukee County District Attorney John Chisholm, who continues to waste taxpayer money on his discredited, illegal, and vindictive John Doe probe of conservatives, while meanwhile his city continues to burn. Thanks for joining us. And join me for my radio show Monday morning on News Radio 620 WTMJ from 8:30 until noon. Have a great week.